Dave, thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to dive straight in. Gary O'Neill, in or out?
I think every Wolves fan you speak to is probably Gary O'Neill out, to be completely honest. It's been a very frustrating season so far. I mean, both managers going into this are under pressure, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But you can see our position in the table isn't great. He was under a hell of a lot of pressure going into our last game against Everton, and a point I don't think would have been good enough. But to lose and to lose by 4 goals and give such a poor performance was, I think, the final nail in the coffin. I think really the only reason he's not gone yet is that Wolves haven't found a suitable replacement. I think there's a few managers probably keeping Wolves at arm's length at the moment in regards to how we're operating in the transfer business, transfer windows, financially, and where we are in the league table. So it's a restricted pool of managers for Wolves, but yeah, it's quite toxic and quite negative in the Wolves space at the moment, unfortunately.
What's gone wrong?
I wish I could put my finger on exactly what it is. I mean, defensively, we've been absolutely awful. It's strange because going forward, goal scoring was one of our problems over the last few years, and that's changed massively this year. In terms of putting the ball in the back of the net, where it's fine, it's no problem at all. But yeah, defensively, we've been atrocious, and it's not necessarily. I was going to say it's not individual errors. It is, but it's not necessarily defenders consistently having, really poor performances. Just daft little errors, daft lapses of concentration. Set pieces have been a really poor area of our game. We sacked our set piece coach, a young lad that had come in the summer, and he was gone after sort of 6 to 8 weeks into the season, and they haven't really improved both attacking and defended. And the last 2 games in particular, we lost 4-2 to Bournemouth. We gave away 3 penalties. All 3 just really stupid errors. The last one, Craig Dawson, just a really poor, careless back pass towards Sarr. And then on Wednesday against Everton, again, set pieces. And look, I love Craig Dawson to pieces. I don't know a lot of West Ham fans do, but I don't have a clue what's going on with him at the moment. He's dropped a couple of stinkers. So defensively, it's a big problem. And Gary O'Neill just hasn't done enough, really. Funnily enough, against Fulham 2-3 weeks ago, we had no centre-backs fit. We had to play Lamina at centre-back, and we beat them 4-1. And I think everyone was like, oh, sound like, we're back to where we should be. And since then, it's gone all pear-shaped again. So, yeah, really defensively, we've been poor. And you look at our numbers and the average of goals we concede, and if we continue, we'll smash the record for the highest amount of goals conceded in the Premier League season. That needs to change sooner rather than later.
In the summer, coming into this season, what were your expectations for Wolves?
I don't know really. A lot of people, whenever I talk about what's going on, they pinpoint it on 2 things: selling Neto and selling Kilman. I mean, you guys will have your own experiences of Max Kilman so far. And what I liked about Kilman when he was at Wolves was in terms of his availability, really. He was fairly reliable, always available. You never saw sort of injuries or suspensions from Max. Look, he's not out of this world, and I felt the fee at the time was a decent amount of money, so I sort of understand why Wolves moved Max Kilman on. Obviously, Neto is a big sale, but ultimately, West Ham would be the same. To have a player of his quality, yeah, it's great, but to have him only available for sort of 20-25% of a season, it's frustrating. So I don't think those are the 2 reasons why Wolves are struggling, but ultimately, I felt. I don't think our squad was strong enough to be knocking on the door for European football again, but certainly it's too strong to be in the position that we're in now. I think, sort of that mid-table region, which is quite boring to think really, but anywhere between sort of 9th and 13th, 14th, I thought we would have been sat in. And probably, yes, we had a tough start to the season, but we're coming near to the halfway point. So we've played a lot of the teams already in and around us as well. So we certainly shouldn't be in this position. But yeah, it's definitely going a lot worse than what a lot of Wolves fans expected. But we had a really poor end to last season, and obviously it's just carried on into this campaign as well.
Obviously, you said that you think some managers are keeping Wolves at arm's length. What has to happen for Gary O'Neill to get sacked in? Is a defeat on Monday enough, or do you think he will get longer?
I don't know. I think a defeat would have to be enough. I think what Wolves are cautious of is, I think Gary O'Neill, in terms of what he's done or where the club are in terms of a position, are probably a lot worse off than what we were under Bruno Lage, for argument's sake. And he got smashed at your place a few years ago, and he got the chop the day after. I think Gary O'Neill has a better squad than Bruno Lage had, and we're in a worse position. So personally, I think his position as manager, he should have gone. But like I said earlier, I think the issue when Bruno Lage was sacked, Wolves had no plan in place to who to bring in. And we ultimately we got very, very lucky the World Cup fell when it did in that winter, because we had no one there to replace him. We tried a few different managers. They all rejected us. Thankfully, I say thankfully, but at the time it was good news that Lopetegui had sort of changed his mind and had said yes to Wolves. Whereas at the moment, I think, like I said, financially, we're not in a great position. The board want to do transfers in a completely, self-sustainable way, which a lot of new managers probably don't like the sound of. And ultimately, we're in a relegation battle. So I know for a fact, managers like David Moyes, Graham Potter will not be joining Wolverhampton Wanderers. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have to start thinking outside the box. Are you going to go to the Championship? Are you going to have to go abroad, which is an even bigger risk in the position that you're in now? And that's the issue for Wolves. I think if they had someone lined up today, Gary O'Neill would probably be sacked, but I don't think they do. And it's going to be difficult because everyone's calling it the El Sackio on Monday. If Wolves lose, I don't know what they'll do if they haven't got somebody lined up, because it's such a risk to even have like your under 21s manager or whoever looking after the team for 2 or 3 weeks until you find a replacement. And ultimately, you're going to be in a much worse position after that as well.
Is there anyone in particular you're hoping for?
See, the three managers that when we sort of knew this moment was probably going to come, the three managers we spoke about as Wolves fans were, and West Ham fans probably have some of the same names in mind as well. Potter was the number one, and that apparently the club made that their number one choice, which I know is not going to happen. Moyes, which I don't think is going to happen. Conceição used to be Porto manager. Other than that, the name that's been linked today is Carlos Corberán, who's the West Brom manager. And you can imagine, West Brom are our fierce rivals. You can imagine the reaction to that. And surprisingly, be quite mixed with Wolves fans. There's actually some Wolves fans that are sort of open to that idea. And I think Wolves do like him, but ultimately he's the West Brom manager. So it's going to be such a difficult appointment. I genuinely don't know. And I think that's the issue that Wolves have got as well, because I think Wolves are a big club. I think, and I know the board can put their hand in their pocket if they really wanted to. I think they're being very difficult, and ultimately it's going to hold the club back. So I don't know. Someone I just thought of earlier on was someone like Mark Robbins. And again, he's not anybody that sort of is going to set the world alight, I don't think. But, did a fairly decent job during his time at Coventry. Probably, I think he would take the job, but it's a little bit of a risk because he hasn't got a hell of a lot of top flight experience. So I really don't know. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster, I think, between now and Christmas anyway.
Steve Cooper's unemployed. If you,
yeah, I fully. It wouldn't surprise me if he's on Wolves' list as well, but I think that would be a disaster as well, to be honest.
You could have Lopetegui back if you want.
We had this conversation. I don't know. I don't think Wolves fans would take him back, obviously, but it would be interesting. I know he gets on well with some of the guys at Wolves, but I think he had a big fallout with the chairman ultimately. So I think that's probably why that one wouldn't happen, to be honest.
Earlier on, when you were speaking about the situation Wolves are in, should they go and appoint a new manager, and you uttered the phrase relegation battle, is that what you see yourself in now? And are you worried about relegation?
Yeah, I think we definitely are. I think we're a certain amount of points adrift of teams like yourselves now, and I think Wolves are definitely in that relegation battle. I think regardless of who's in charge, our next 3 games are massive. We've got yourselves. We've then got Ipswich next weekend, and Leicester the game before Christmas. Wolves could easily go and get 9 points out of those 3. And I think it would leave them in an interesting position if Gary O'Neill wins Monday, keeps his job, wins next week. It'd be a very, very interesting situation. But yeah, I think we have to be coming towards the halfway point of the season. You've got 2 wins all campaign, defensively woeful. And I've never, ever felt under pressure or felt in this position, even when we were sort of bottom going into that World Cup break. I felt there was there was enough time, and at the time obviously we had Lopetegui coming in, who at that time had a really good reputation, and Wolves backed him with a lot of money, whereas this window coming up I don't have that same confidence. So do I think Wolves have the squad capable of staying in the Premier League? Yes, 100%. But ultimately, it's who they've got in charge and in that dugout at the moment. We've got to get someone that can instill some more confidence into this team. But yeah, like I said earlier, we're scoring goals. It's just we've got to find someone that can shore us up a little bit more defensively.
From your team to my team, what do you make of West Ham?
When Lopetegui came in, I was really unsure how it was going to go. I felt and I can't remember if I made any comments when I spoke to you last time. I felt it was going to go one of two ways: either go very, very well, or pretty much what's happening now and a little bit of a disaster. I think you've got enough quality. You should certainly be higher up in the table. I don't know if I'm surprised with how quick it's turned on him, to be completely honest. But obviously, I don't know all the ins and outs, what's been said and what's been done. But I've seen obviously he's fallen out with a couple of players, which never ends too well, to be honest. So he was desperate to prove a point in England, Lopetegui, and I think that's backfired on him massively. So I don't think he'll be coming back to England anytime soon. And again, I think similar to Gary O'Neill, the writing's just on the wall. It's just a case of when they're sacked and not if they're sacked now.
Do you think we should be sacking Lopetegui?
I think you're in a position where you can certainly, so I haven't watched a hell of a lot of West Ham. I watched the game against Newcastle where I thought you actually did quite well. You played really well in that game, but I don't know. I think if you start to lose the dressing room a little bit, it's only going to end one way. I certainly don't think Wolves are in a much worse position than you guys. I think, you have no worries in regards to relegation. And I'd be interested to see if you or West Ham fans think you are in that relegation battle. I think, you got far too much quality for that. But with the money that you'd spent in the summer, you're certainly going to be expecting to be much higher up in the table as well. And, I have no doubt if he was in a better position, they would have backed him again in January. So West Ham have got a massive pull, good squad, London based. I think, you got a much better position and pulling power than what Wolves have at the moment as well.
Before I ask you how you think Monday is going for you guys at home, we'll be doing a video over on Dave's channel as well, where I'll be in the hot seat answering all the questions about Wolves, Lopetegui and West Ham. So you want to check that out. The link's in the description below, and it'll be on the end slate at the end of the video. But Dave, speaking of Monday night then, how do you see El Sackio going?
I genuinely don't know. I can see a situation where Wolves win, and I can see a situation where West Ham batter us as well. It'll be sod's law for a lot of people watching at home. It ends in a 0-0 or 1-1 draw. I could just see that probably happening. But I really, can't decide. I never want to go into a game to lose, and I'm sure every fan is the same. You want to win, but ultimately the writing's on the wall for both managers, and a win's just going to paper over the cracks that are already there. So I genuinely don't know. And Wolves have shown up some games and look fantastic, and then you get the other side of the coin, like Wednesday, where it was one of the worst performances I've seen from Wolves in a long, long time. To be honest, the last two have been the poorest performances of the season. And when you concede 4 to a team in Everton who hadn't scored in 4 and were the lowest scorers in the Premier League before Wednesday, that's a big concern for me. So I would probably, if I had money on it, I'd probably side with West Ham, with them being at home. And I think you've probably got that little bit more quality than us. But it could go either way. I think you would be a brave man to predict the outcome of this game.
I know there's maybe some more than others, with Ait Nouri being the biggest example, but do you think there's some players who will almost have an extra bit of motivation for Wolves on Monday because they are up against Lopetegui?
Possibly, yeah. I think he left the majority of that squad in a very difficult position at the end of at the start of last season. Yeah, Ait Nouri is a perfect example. Which really, Lopetegui, for whatever reason, didn't really get on with him and didn't like him as a player, which is, everyone's got preferences of a player, but I think Ait Nouri was one of the stars for us last season, and it just showed really, whereas Lopetegui was open to moving him on. I would hope so. I think there's a lot of players there. There are some that Lopetegui brought in. Cunha was a big one that, Lopetegui had big pulling power towards, and he's really kicked on and been a fantastic player for us so far this season. But yeah, there will be some players in that squad, which I'm sure will have a decent relationship with Lopetegui, but will want to sort of prove a point, because this is the first time we're facing off against him since he left us. They'll want to prove that he was wrong to walk away at the start of the last campaign.
Well, I know you're a little bit unsure, Dave, but crystal ball time, what's your score prediction?
My heart is saying a 2-1 Wolves win, but my head, I genuinely think it's going to be one of the most frustrating results for everyone involved, I think it'll finish 1-1. I think
Yeah,
it'll be a draw, and it just doesn't help anybody.
that when we did our preview, I went 1-1 as well, and I can't tell if it means both managers stay in the job or both managers get sacked off the back of it. Like,
I don't think it does. It's a probably worse result for Wolves because it doesn't really achieve anything for us. You obviously gain at a point, but it doesn't really achieve much for either club. But I can see it being a 1-1 draw probably.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. You guys at home, thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it by clicking thumbs up. Subscribing to Hammer's channel. If you want a second helping of myself and Dave as we're ready to switch roles, then the link to that video in the description below will be on your screen in about 2 seconds. So stick around, click it, and we'll see you over there.